New footage just dropped and fans are convinced Hulk Hogan was murdered. Honestly, it wouldn't be that surprising. Hogan made a lot of enemies.
I had a target on my back the whole time.
Some even admitted they still hate him to this day.
Would you consider burying the hatchet with Hulk Hogan?
No.
This new footage shows some disturbing stuff, and all signs are pointing to someone. Let's break it down. Hulk Hogan's final chapter. On the morning of July 24th, 2025, the wrestling world was shaken to its core when emergency responders rushed to a home in Clearwater, Florida, following what would become one of the most tragic days in sports entertainment history. At approximately 9:51 a.m., Clearwater Fire and Rescue responded to a cardiac arrest call at the Clearwater Beach residence of Terry Gene Bollea, better known to the world as Hulk Hogan. The scene that unfolded would mark the end of an era that had defined professional wrestling for over 4 decades. The gravity of the situation became immediately apparent when Major Nate Burnside of the Clearwater Police Department stepped before the cameras to deliver news that would reverberate throughout the entertainment world. His words, measured and professional, carried the weight of announcing the death of a cultural icon. The official police briefing painted a picture of a man who, despite his legendary status, was ultimately human in his final moments.
Just before 10 a.m. today, Clearwater Fire and Rescue along with the Clearwater Police Department responded to a house in the 1000 block of El Dorado Avenue for a medical-related call. It was discovered at that time Terry Bollea, also known as Hulk Hogan, was experiencing a serious medical-related issue. Personnel provided medical treatment at that time and transported Mr. Bollea to Morton Plant Hospital, where he died at 11:17 a.m.
The timeline of events tells the story of a medical emergency that unfolded with frightening speed. Emergency services had received the call at 9:51 a.m. describing a man in cardiac arrest. Despite the rapid response and immediate medical intervention, Hogan was pronounced dead at Morton Plant Hospital at 11:17 a.m., just over an hour after the initial emergency call.
The Clearwater Police Department is conducting a death investigation, which is standard in these types of cases. There are no signs of foul play or suspicious activity related to this call for service at this time.
The investigation that followed was thorough and found no signs of foul play or suspicious activity. But not everyone's buying it. Some fans are convinced he was murdered. But to truly understand the tragedy of this moment, we must examine the health struggles that had been mounting in the months and years leading up to that fateful morning. The story of Hulk Hogan's final battles wasn't just written in the wrestling ring. It was written in hospital rooms, surgical suites, and the private moments where a man confronted his mortality away from the spotlight that had defined his life. The weeks leading up to Hogan's death had been marked by concerning health developments that, in retrospect, painted a troubling picture of a man whose body was failing him. In June 2025, reports emerged that Hogan had undergone pretty serious heart surgery, a procedure that his representatives had initially downplayed, insisting it wasn't a near-death situation. The conflicting reports about Hogan's condition in his final weeks revealed the complexity of his health struggles. While his wife, Sky Daly, had been vocal in denying rumors about his condition, posting on Instagram that his heart is strong and there was never any lack of oxygen or brain damage. The reality was far more dire than anyone publicly acknowledged. The heart problems that ultimately claimed Hogan's life appeared to be a relatively recent development in what had been a long saga of health challenges. Unlike his well-documented back and spine issues, which had been the subject of public discussion for years, Hogan's heart condition seemed to emerge as a significant concern only in 2025. The medical details surrounding Hogan's cardiac issues paint a sobering picture of a man whose body had been pushed beyond its limits. Sources close to the family revealed that he had undergone multiple heart-related procedures in the final year of his life, each one a desperate attempt to buy more time for a body that had endured decades of punishment. The cardiac arrest that killed Hogan wasn't just a random medical event, it was the culmination of a perfect storm of factors that had been building for years. The potential connection between his documented steroid use during his wrestling career and his heart problems cannot be ignored. Medical research has consistently shown that long-term anabolic steroid use significantly increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, and sudden cardiac death. And now, there's rumor that those tasked with his well-being might be responsible for his death. The evidence is wild because Hulk Hogan had already caught them trying to kill him once. A body broken by glory. The story of Hulk Hogan's death cannot be fully understood without examining the decades-long battle his body fought against the punishment it endured in pursuit of wrestling glory. By the time emergency responders arrived at his Clearwater home on that July morning, they were attempting to save a man whose body had already been through more trauma and surgical intervention than most people could imagine surviving. The numbers alone tell a staggering story of physical deterioration. In one of his interviews, Hogan revealed that he had undergone 25 surgeries in just the last 10 years of his life, with the majority focused on trying to repair the damage that decades of wrestling had inflicted on his spine, joints, and internal organs. This wasn't just the normal wear and tear of athletic competition. This was the systematic breakdown of a human body that had been pushed far beyond its natural limits.
Pain management.
Yeah, that's a whole nother trip, brother, because I've had 25 surgeries in the last 10 years. So when people say, hey, the wrestling's fake, it goes right up my ass. Because at the end of the day, it's predetermined. If you and I are wrestling, they're going to tell us who's going to win or lose. But all that stuff that happens in the middle, it hurts.
The centerpiece of Hogan's medical struggles was his spine, which had borne the brunt of his signature finishing move for over 3 decades. The leg drop that made him famous had become the source of his greatest physical torment, a cruel irony that the very move that defined his career would ultimately contribute to his physical downfall.
Is there anything in your career that you would go back and change?
I know the leg drop doesn't look like a tough move. So all those years dropping that leg in those rings, with the board sticking up or laying on my tailbone, oh my God, what was that, a rock in the ring? Oh my God, was that a board sticking up? All those years dropping the leg, I would have changed that, and I would have never dropped the leg.
The surgical history that Hogan accumulated reads like a medical textbook of athletic injuries taken to their extreme conclusion. His spine had been fused, rebuilt, and reconstructed multiple times, with each procedure offering temporary relief, but ultimately failing to address the fundamental damage that had accumulated over decades of abuse. The most dramatic of these procedures occurred in 2010, when Hogan underwent a 12-hour spinal fusion surgery that was nothing short of medical reconstruction. The procedure involved fusion work, restructuring, and complete rebuilding of his spine, a last-ditch attempt to provide structural integrity to a skeletal system that had been compromised beyond normal repair.
Hulk,
Yes, sir.
you had spinal fusion for 9 hours.
Yeah.
That's no joke.
Yeah. No, 12 hours.
12 hours.
Recently?
It was back surgery number 8.
Oh, jeez.
Because, wrestling has...
While it's fake, the injuries are real.
The injuries are real.
Here we go again.
It's a performance.
But the spine was just the beginning of Hogan's medical odyssey. Both of his knees had been replaced, along with both hips, in procedures that had become necessary due to the repetitive trauma of his wrestling career. His shoulders had been reconstructed multiple times, and even his facial features had required surgical intervention after years of taking hits to the head.
Well, I don't have the movement back. I have a real hard time, just doing normal things. I can't.
From the back being fused.
Yeah, the back and
How many discs are fused?
everything's fused.
The whole back.
I've had 10 back surgeries, but
The physical transformation that these surgeries produced was visible to anyone who had followed Hogan's career. Once standing at 6 and 7, the accumulated effect of spinal compression and surgical intervention had reduced his height to approximately 6'4", a 3-inch loss that served as a constant reminder of the price his body had paid for his success. The pain that accompanied these injuries was unlike anything most people could comprehend. In candid interviews, Hogan described a level of suffering that went far beyond normal discomfort, painting a picture of a man trapped in a body that had become his enemy.
How much pain are you in right now?
everything hurts. It's hard to explain. Like if I'm going to brush my teeth and I'm leaning on the counter brushing my teeth, I can't push away.
The daily reality of living with such extensive physical damage was something that Hogan struggled to convey to those around him. Simple tasks that healthy people take for granted had become monumental challenges requiring careful planning and considerable effort.
When I'm done brushing my teeth, I have to lean in like that and then pull back. I can't push like a glass door open. Everything in the gym is short strokes. I can't straighten my arms out.
Yeah.
And then it's the same with my knees, my hips, my back, my neck. But that's because I probably wrestled too long, and I didn't get the memo that stuff was fake.
The cascade of health problems that stemmed from his original injuries created a domino effect that would plague Hogan for the rest of his life. The loss of feeling in his lower body following one of his final back surgeries was perhaps the most devastating development, representing not just physical limitation, but a fundamental change in his relationship with his own body. The medical malpractice lawsuit that Hogan filed against the Laser Spine Institute in 2013 provides insight into just how desperate his situation had become. He alleged that the facility had performed unnecessary and ineffective procedures that actually worsened his condition, costing him not just money, but precious time, and further damaging his already compromised spine. The lawsuit revealed that Hogan had undergone 6 procedures in 19 months at the facility, each providing only temporary relief before the pain returned, suggesting that the treatments were essentially burning nerves that would eventually regenerate, creating a cycle of temporary improvement followed by return to baseline pain levels. The pain management challenges that accompanied these injuries led Hogan down a dangerous path of prescription drug dependency that nearly claimed his life years before his eventual cardiac arrest. His addiction to painkillers, which he described as a vicious cycle, became so severe that pharmacists warned him about the potentially lethal doses he was prescribed.
The thing that shut me down completely, where I said enough's enough, is when they hit me with the fentanyl stuff. They almost killed me with that stuff. So that's when I said, I'm done. And I didn't even know they gave it to me, but morphine and Dilaudid and none of that stuff worked on my back. I'd had so many surgeries.
The fentanyl experience that Hogan described was a terrifying glimpse into how close he had come to death years before his actual passing. The dosages he was prescribed were so extreme that medical professionals expressed shock that he was still alive while taking them, highlighting just how desperate the medical establishment had become in their attempts to manage his pain.
And the pharmacist says, I've never seen anybody on so much fentanyl and still be alive. And so that was the prescription they were giving me because my back was so bad. They cut on me so much and compromised the structural integrity of my back by cutting so much bone away that I was just a mess,
The physical toll of wrestling wasn't limited to the obvious injuries sustained during matches. The lifestyle demands of the profession, including the grueling travel schedule that saw him wrestling 450 times per year during his prime, created a perfect storm of physical stress that no human body was designed to endure.
Well, we were talking earlier, when I was doing this full time, before this John Cena and The Rock and these guys came around, I was really flying 300 days a year.
300 days.
And I was wrestling 400 to 450 times a year.
The development of mobility issues in Hogan's later years painted a tragic picture of a man whose body had simply worn out from decades of abuse. Reports that he needed a cane to walk and had lost feeling in his legs represented the final chapter in a long story of physical deterioration. The neck surgery that Hogan underwent in May 2025, just months before his death, was described as a little fusion procedure, but the complications that followed, including damage to his trachea that affected his ability to speak, suggested that even minor interventions carried significant risks for a body that had been through so much trauma. The sheer scope of Hogan's surgical history reads like a medical disaster. 25 surgeries in 10 years, including 10 specifically on his back, both knees and hips replaced, both shoulders reconstructed, facial surgeries from being hit, and abdominal procedures. Each procedure represented not just a medical intervention, but a battle in an ongoing war against a body that was systematically failing. Perhaps most telling was Hogan's own assessment of his condition in his final years. Despite all the surgeries, all the medical interventions, and all the attempts to restore function to his damaged body, he remained philosophical about the price he had paid for his success.
But, all that being said, the body's an amazing thing, and with all the metal and all the abdominal surgeries and shoulder surgeries and all this stuff that's happened to me, the upside is, bro, I'm living a good life. I'm happy. I may not be able to run as good as him or walk as good as you, but at the end of the day, I'm 7 years old. I train every day. I eat great.
The transformation from the physical specimen who had dominated wrestling in the 1980s to the man who struggled with basic daily functions in his final years represents one of the most dramatic examples of how professional wrestling's physical demands can destroy even the strongest human bodies. But his health struggles only tell one side of the story, because Hulk Hogan's story is filled with controversy. From racism to betraying friends, the wrestling legend's record isn't as clean as you'd think. The immortal legacy. To truly understand the magnitude of what the world lost on July 24, 2025, we must journey back to where it all began. To a young boy named Terry Gene Bollea, born on August 11, 1953, in Augusta, Georgia, who would grow up to become the most recognizable face in professional wrestling history. The transformation from that child to the global icon known as Hulk Hogan represents not just a personal journey, but the evolution of an entire industry. Terry's early life in Port Tampa, Florida, where his family moved when he was young, showed little indication of the superstardom that awaited him. His father, Pietro Peter Bollea, worked as a construction foreman, while his mother, Ruth, was a homemaker and dance teacher. The family was working class, grounded in the kind of values that would later become central to Hogan's all-American wrestling persona. The seeds of Hogan's future were planted during his teenage years when he discovered both music and wrestling. As a youth, he was actively involved in sports, particularly excelling as a pitcher in Little League Baseball, showing early signs of the athletic ability that would later make him famous. But it was his discovery of professional wrestling at age 16 that would change the trajectory of his life forever. Inspired by wrestlers like Dusty Rhodes and superstar Billy Graham, young Terry was captivated by the larger-than-life personas and dramatic storytelling that defined professional wrestling. The physiques of these men, particularly Billy Graham's bodybuilder-inspired look, planted the idea that wrestling could be his path to something greater than the construction work that seemed to be his destiny. Before wrestling consumed his life, Terry had pursued music with genuine passion, playing fretless bass guitar in local rock bands, including a group called Ruckus that gained popularity in the Tampa Bay region. The skills he developed as a performer reading crowds, commanding attention, creating an emotional connection with audiences, would prove invaluable when he later stepped into wrestling rings around the world. The transition from musician to wrestler wasn't immediate or easy. Hogan's training under Hiro Matsuda was legendary for its brutality, with Matsuda allegedly breaking Hogan's leg during his first session to test his commitment to the business. This early test of his dedication foreshadowed the physical punishment that would define his entire career. Hogan's professional wrestling debut came on August 9, 1977, against Brian Blair in Fort Myers, Florida, marking the beginning of a journey that would span over 3 decades and revolutionize the entertainment industry. The early years were characterized by constant evolution, as Terry experimented with different personas and ring names, including Sterling Golden and Terry Boulder, searching for the character that would make him a star. The breakthrough moment came in December 1983, when Vince McMahon Jr. signed Hogan to the World Wrestling Federation, setting the stage for the phenomenon that would become known as Hulkamania. The timing was perfect. Wrestling was ready for a crossover star who could appeal to mainstream audiences, and Hogan possessed the charisma, look, and natural showmanship to fill that role. On January 23, 1984, Hulk Hogan defeated the Iron Sheik to win his first WWF Championship at Madison Square Garden, launching an era that would transform professional wrestling from a regional curiosity into a global entertainment phenomenon. The image of Hogan celebrating with the championship, his blonde mustache and bandana becoming instantly iconic, represents one of the most important moments in sports entertainment history. The peak of Hogan's initial WWF run came at WrestleMania 3 in 1987, when he body-slammed Andre the Giant in front of 93,000 fans at the Pontiac Silverdome, creating what many consider the most iconic moment in professional wrestling history. The image of Hogan lifting the 520-pound giant and slamming him to the mat transcended wrestling, becoming a defining moment of 1980s pop culture. Hogan's cultural impact extended far beyond the wrestling ring. He appeared on magazine covers, including Sports Illustrated, TV Guide, and People. He co-hosted Saturday Night Live on March 30th, 1985, and had his own Saturday morning cartoon, Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling, from 1985 to 1986. His catchphrases became part of American lexicon, and millions of children listened intently as their hero urged them to say their prayers and eat their vitamins. The transformation from beloved hero to Hollywood villain came in 1996, when Hogan shocked the wrestling world by revealing himself as the leader of the New World Order at WCW's Bash at the Beach. The heel turn was so effective that fans literally threw garbage into the ring, demonstrating the emotional investment audiences had in the character he had created. Hogan's wrestling achievements speak for themselves: 12 world championships, including 6 WWF WWE championships and 6 WCW World Heavyweight Championships. He was the first wrestler to win consecutive Royal Rumble matches in 1990 and 1991, and he headlined 8 of the first 9 WrestleMania events. His match with Andre the Giant on February 5, 1988, on the main event drew a record 33 million viewers, holding American television viewership viewership records for wrestling. However, Hogan's story wasn't just one of triumph and glory. His career was punctuated by significant controversies that would eventually tarnish his legacy. In 1994, during Vince McMahon's trial for steroid distribution, Hogan testified under immunity, admitting to using anabolic steroids for nearly 14 years. He stated that steroid use was fairly common among wrestlers in the 1980s, with most wrestlers he knew using them. This admission damaged his family-friendly image, but it was nothing compared to the scandal that would nearly end his career decades later. In July 2015, a leaked tape from 2007 surfaced, revealing Hogan using racial slurs, including the N-word, while discussing his daughter's dating life. The fallout was immediate and devastating.
I was at the lowest point of my life. My personal life was destroyed. I was very mad at my daughter.
WWE terminated his contract on July 24, 2015, and removed all references to him from their website, including his Hall of Fame status. Merchandise was pulled from retailers like Target and Walmart, and Mattel ceased producing his action figures. The man who had spent decades as a role model for children found himself completely erased from the company he had helped build.
I had no idea I was being taped. I was to the point where I wanted to kill myself. I sat in my bathroom by myself when my ex-wife was gone and the kids were gone, and I was completely broken and destroyed. And
the racism scandal wasn't his only controversy. His contentious relationship with Jesse Ventura stemmed from the 1980s, when Hogan reportedly informed Vince McMahon about Ventura's efforts to unionize wrestlers. This betrayal created a decades-long feud that continues to this day. Jesse Ventura discovered this betrayal during a federal deposition when Vince McMahon, under oath, revealed that Hogan was the one who ratted out the unionization efforts.
And when my attorney said, Mr. McMahon, has there ever been a union in wrestling? And Vince said, no. He said, has anyone ever tried to? And Vince said, well, I think Jesse Ventura spouted his mouth off about it once before. And my attorney said, did you hear Mr. Ventura? No. Well, then how do you know he did? With no hesitation, Vince went, Hulk Hogan told me.
Ventura has never forgiven this betrayal, and their relationship remains irreparably broken.
If you start working with WWE again, would you consider burying the hatchet with Hulk Hogan?
No.
Conversation, at least?
I don't know.
When was the last time you spoke to Hulk Hogan?
I don't know.
Despite these controversies, Hogan was eventually reinstated into the WWE Hall of Fame on July 15, 2018, after numerous apologies and efforts to work with young people. Support came from black wrestling figures like The Rock, Dennis Rodman, Booker T, and Kamala, though critics like Mark Henry and Titus O'Neil expressed reservations. His business ventures outside wrestling were extensive, including restaurants like Pastamania and Hogan's Beach, energy drinks, and the launch of Real American Beer in 2024. He also appeared in numerous films, including his memorable role as Thunderlips in Rocky III, which ironically got him fired from the WWF by Vince McMahon Sr.
I mean, I remember when I was going to go do that film, Vince McMahon Sr. fired me because of that movie.
Politically, Hogan aligned himself with Donald Trump, speaking at the 2024 Republican National Convention and various Trump rallies. This political involvement further cemented his status as a polarizing figure in American culture. There are mixed reactions to Hulk Hogan's death, but he will definitely be remembered as a wrestling legend. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.